This is a Viva PR podcast.
The highest valued comms tool is face-to-face. There's going to become more of a blurring between internal communications and external. Goes back to understanding your audience and what tools they utilise to help deliver your internal communications message. I doubt our MD thinks he can do everything. It's a collective effort, but understand how you can contribute and where you can add value.
Hello and welcome to PR in the Real World with me, Tony Garner. Today we're turning our attention to comms in the defence sector. Lancashire isn't just our home, it's also the base for BAE Systems' UK fastjet business. Here they produce aircraft like the Hawk, the Typhoon, and teams are currently working on a next generation fighter. In this episode, I'm delighted to say we're joined by Paul Earnshaw, BAE Systems Head of Communications for Sustainability and Community Investment. We discuss the real-world challenges he and his comms colleagues face every day. Paul's had a fascinating 30-year journey with the company, and his insights on how to get a message across, plus the blurring of lines between internal and external comms, are worth sticking around for. Shall we crack on? So, welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Tony.
Before we get into the kind of nitty-gritty and the challenges of the role, just tell us all about your role at BAE Systems and how long you've been involved.
So my current role is as Head of Communications for Sustainability and Community Investment. But my career with BAE, which was British Aerospace back when I joined in 1993. So that's 3 decades plus a little bit. I actually joined the company as a business apprentice, so not as a ex-journalist or somebody with a PR or marketing degree. I joined as on the apprenticeship scheme. My first full-time job with the company was as part of the site director's office, which did some type of external relations as part of that role. So in 1996, a communications team was set up at Samlesbury, and I think they were looking around for, I was going to say talents, but looking around for people. And I think sort of went, well, you've sort of done some communications type activity. Do you fancy a job in the comms team? So I joined, and here we are 28 years later. Lots of different aspects of comms over those 28 years in comms. So yeah, it's been an interesting and varied career through the various aspects of British Aerospace, as was, and now BAE Systems.
Now, where you work is responsible for the combat aircraft that UK produces.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the business does there?
Yeah, so I'm part of the communications team in the air sector within BAE Systems. So obviously you've got the overall group, 100,000 employees globally. If you come to the air sector, it is predominantly UK, but has a significant presence in the Middle East and a few people in Germany, across Europe as part of our partner companies and in the US. So if we just stick with the UK, the air sector has around 14,000 employees at probably 20 plus sites. The 2 biggest being here in Lancashire at Warton and Samlesbury. Most people will know or know somebody who works there. And between those 2 sites, there's probably 10,500 employees just across those two sites. And as you said, the air sector is responsible for design, manufacture and support of the UK's combat air capability, but also the Hawk, which is a trading platform, the Red Arrows that have been using those for 50 or so years. So yeah, it's a engineering, manufacturing, and increasingly over the past 10 years support type organisation.
So was it the tornadoes and typhoons and hawks that drew you into this business and gets you excited?
No, not really. I left college having done business and finance. So, I saw the advert for the apprenticeship and obviously was aware of British Aerospace as was then. You used to drive past it on the old Kentucky road, for those who know that, and see the aircraft on the thing. And I was always, what is that? Didn't really know anybody who worked there back then. So no, it was effectively back then just a job. But as I said, over the decades I've been there, it's to me, it's the people and the impact that the organisation has in terms of, jobs for life, the apprenticeship schemes it offers, the skills it creates, the economic impact it has, and the people who work there. The fact that they do amazing things, engineering and manufacturing wise, is an additional bonus. But it's not. I'm not an aeroplane geek or an engineering geek. I think that sometimes helps from a comms perspective. If I can convert, or a colleague convert highly technical detail into something that I can understand, it's always a good sign that most people who aren't engineers or manufacturers will be able to get. But I think what you've got to appreciate is that only 50% of the employees that we have aren't involved in engineering or manufacturing.
Right.
You look at, it's the old adage of, if you remember the RAF I've worked, you don't have to be a pilot to fly with the RAF.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an engineer or manufacturer to fly with BAE Systems. You've got, HR people, comms people, accountants, lawyers. It's an all ecosystem, but it's all ultimately geared around supporting those engineers and manufacturers who produce that product.
Interesting. And I'd like to kind of look back at the kind of evolution then of the things that you've seen over your time there, and how the kind of comms function role has developed with the shift to digital, and how internal comms has transformed in that period as well.
It's and you must have seen the industry as a whole is completely different. I don't think it probably was even an industry back in 1993, 1996. It was. There was nobody coming out of universities with PR degrees or communications degrees. It was in the very early stages of establishing what it was. A lot of the time, back then was around almost being an internal journalist. It was around finding what was happening across the business, and through newsletters, magazines, or predominantly printed material. Keeping employees up to date was what was happening across the business. My comms career predates the internet. That shows how old I am. But that's just a simple. That didn't exist.
Yeah.
And intranets didn't exist. Apps didn't exist. I think mobile phones just about existed, but it was literally a text and a call. That's all you could do. Yeah. So it has revolutionised aspects of internal comms, but I still come back to most people, irrespective of age, role, demographic, the highest valued comms tool is face-to-face, because there's an instant trust, because it's normally delivered by either a leader they recognise or the line manager, where you have that built-in trust because you work with them on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So despite all the technological advances, the changes in channel availability, the key thing for me from an internal comms point of view and engaging employees is that face-to-face communications, which across an organisation of 14,000 can be difficult at times, but it's the one I think where you get most engagement and most buy-in from your audiences.
Now, you and I go back a long while. I worked alongside you at Wharton for a spell. When
I turned up.
Yeah, well, I turned up. And you always played great store on authenticity and being able to connect with people, but yet you're in this big global corporate organisation. And I'm just interested to kind of how do you get that authentic voice aligned with that corporate voice, and is that a tricky balance?
It is and it isn't, because I think our senior leadership team that we use for a lot of our communications stuff believe that authenticity is key as well, and I think what using myself as an example, I've been there 31 years. If you look at a lot of the board, so our senior management team, a lot of them have grown up through the organisation. Our current group managing director started out as an apprentice, as did a number of the board. So they've grown up through the organisation, so are known. So if they're not authentic on the tools that they're utilising, whether it be video or face-to-face, people will know it's not them.
Yeah.
So that will undermine their credibility, but also the comms function's credibility in terms of why you're getting Dave or whoever to use that sort of language. That's not him. We don't recognise him. So I think that longevity in the business helps with that authenticity because people know the individuals. So as a comms person, that makes that a bit easier. Yeah. But to me, it is that authenticity and credibility. And you always get some interesting debates, particularly with the use of video, if I just use that as a channel. Yeah. When people talk, they hum on the earth. They don't, they're not scripted TV or newsreaders. And I think you sometimes find comms people go, we just need to reshoot that bit because there was an and an Well, that's how people talk. Yeah. If it's polished, personal views, you sometimes lose that authenticity because there isn't an and an And if you transcribed what people said in a video, half the time it won't make sense. No. Because you don't write how you talk. Yeah. And I think it's that balance of actually allow your senior leaders, equipped with the right messaging to deliver it in almost words of their own choosing. Yeah. Because that's how you get the authenticity and you maintain both their individual credibility but also that as a comms team. Yeah, just a note here to producer Dan. Cut out all my ums and ahs because otherwise this podcast will be about 3 hours long. Yeah. So let's look at the kind of challenges you face as a comms professional in a huge organisation. You mentioned just in the kind of hinterland from where we're recording this is 10,000 plus people, and then it's much wider. But you've got how many sites? 25 sites in the UK? Probably major in terms of big numbers. You've probably got 8 or 9, but then you have, and you've got additional challenge of people do remote working, hybrid working, not on site 5 days a week like everybody was pre-COVID, which is an additional challenge. So how do you get messages out to that kind of disparate, huge workforce? There are a number of tools, but I think as well as numbers, you have additional challenges in terms of age demographic. We go from 16 to 70. Yeah. And lots in between. So people's preferences from how they receive communications differs. Set aside my face-to-face being the primary thing. Podcasts, video, use of apps, intranet, people still like picking up magazines and newspapers. So you've got that in the mix, and across 14,000 people, if we just pick on the UK, you've got large numbers of people in each camp. Additional to that, you've got, I'll describe them as, what do we call them, audience segments, or I'll call them tribes. If you're a person, whether you're on the shop floor in a manufacturing area or you're an accountant in an office area, you have connections to so many aspects of the business that are all potentially competing for your comms time, your air time, if you like, in terms of the messaging. So if you just pick somebody who's works in manufacturing and helps build Typhoons, if we just use that. So you've got their immediate team, you've got the building that they're in, you've got the function, the manufacturing function, you've got their line of business, you've got their site, you've got their sector, and then you've got the overall BAE Systems group. So that's just 7 quickly. So you've got 7 parts of a business or organisation who wants to engage and communicate with that one individual. Yeah. So it's challenging. So it's how do you get what's important and relevant, if I call it pushed to them. Yeah. But then how do you enable them to pull on content that's relevant or of interest to them? So we have an employee app that we use as our, primary digital channel that connects up with the intranet, because you've got the added complication that in some areas on site, obviously if you're working out on the manufacturing floor plate, you tend not to have your mobile phone while you're assembling aeroplanes. So that's an additional challenge. There's a significant percentage of the population who are, in inverted commas, offline for a large percentage of their time. So therefore, you get back to the importance of supervisors, team leaders, sort of doing that delivery of communications that they need to be aware of, whilst enabling and providing content from the central group comms team, if you like, in terms of app, videos, content, news about stuff that will be of interest to them. And it's a balance, 100,000 people, 14,000 in the air sector. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people want to tell the work that their teams are doing because they take great pride in them.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of competition for airtime, if I call it that. So you've got to, the digital tools, you've got to allow it to be self-selecting and personalised so individuals can see what's relevant and what's pertinent to their role, but also of interest to them.
So that's, presumably though, you still get people knocking on your door and dropping you emails. Paul, we need a video. Paul, we need this. Paul, we need a poster about this.
Absolutely, and it's always the challenge of so what?
Yeah.
It's hard. The great thing about the people at BAE is they all take great pride in their work, and not everybody, but lots of people want to shout about what they and their teams do, which is great from a comms point of view because it gives you lots of content. The challenge is sometimes, adversely, they hide their light under a bushel because it's just what they do. They just get on and deliver. So you've got that, opposite sides of the same coin. But it's the so what challenge. Who needs to know about, not all 14,000 people in the air sector need to know about every single thing, and sometimes that's you've got to manage your stakeholders in that essence of going, I know it's really important, but it's only really important to that 500 people who are going to use that process or whatever it may be. So to me, that always comes down to relationships.
Yeah.
So that whether that's a relationship with a stakeholder whose message you are trying to deliver, or the relationship you've got with the audience that you are trying to reach.
Yeah.
So it's all about relationships for me.
Yeah. Interesting. You've talked a lot about face-to-face communications being critical. How do you empower line managers to be effective communicators within this kind of bubble? And surely that my dad has this expression, it's the singer, not the song. And you'll have some line managers who are brilliant communicators, and then you'll have others.
Yes, you do. And it's interesting because you can't give people empowerment, can you? You can't. I can't go, Tony, you're empowered. It does. If it was that simple, it'd be great. And I think that's a wider cultural thing. It probably got to all organisations of your line managers at whatever level need to feel empowered in all things, not just communications. But they also need to be empowered to delegate that. If they're not a brilliant communicator, but they've got somebody in their team who is, and they're utilising content or tools that are provided centrally, a monthly team brief type activity, then let the individual who's a great communicator deliver it. The line manager can be there to support, answer questions.
Yeah.
So it's using skill sets, recognise that, we all build teams where individuals around us are better at the job than we are. That's the sign of a good manager. You build a team around that's better at the job than you are. So allow them to do the stuff that they're better than you at.
Yeah.
But you've got to provide content that's engaging. But you've also, people have got to feel the power of going, I don't know.
Yeah.
The number of thousands of people, line managers who manage people within our organisation, aren't going to know the answer to every single question.
Yeah.
But to me, that you get the engagement by going, I don't know, but I'll go and find out.
Yeah.
And close the loop.
Yeah.
And that's irrespective of organisation, level. It's that actually I will go and find out. And if I'll go back to my idea, you're a shop floor operator making Typhoons and you ask your supervisor about something that's happening in the submarines business because they've announced a contract. The supervisor, you're not going to know. Your team colleague doesn't even expect you to know, but would like you to go and find out. And I think it's just that closing that loop of actually, no, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Now, as I said, but you and I go back a while, and I know you've had some tricky assignments over the time. You've had some challenging stuff to have to deal with, like communications around redundancies and so on. What are the key kind of lessons when you reflect on picking up those tricky tasks that you look back on?
For me, they're the times where I've learned the most about communications in general, but also probably myself as an individual.
Yeah.
But it comes back to those relationships.
Yeah.
You are operating in a very challenging environment. You have to be credible. The message that you're delivering has to be credible, and it has to be empathetic. Because going through some of those processes, you are asking individuals within the organisation who are potentially under threat of redundancy themselves to deliver communications around that particular topic. And that is a really difficult situation, for the whole organisation as a whole, not just from a communications perspective. So it's really, it is difficult because I'll go back to, you've got lots of people who've grown up through the organisation. So it is, in essence, it's quite often a family.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. You've had managing directors who've been with the organisation for 30 years who've grown up with hundreds of people in the organisation, and they're having to front up the communications message around that particular topic. It's really difficult. And it comes back to that authenticity and that credibility of them as individuals, but the organisation as a whole. And the challenge is always information and delivering things when you've said you're going to deliver it. Yeah. There's always a thirst for information in that sort of scenario and situation. People want to know.
Yeah.
And sometimes you haven't got the answers. So what you've got to say is, we haven't got the answers, we'll work with it, but we will give you an update at this particular point. But then you have to deliver to that point.
Yeah.
That's for communications in general, but even more so in a situation like that. But yeah, to me, it all comes down to that credibility and authenticity again. And, in those particular circumstances, attention to detail is critical. But the one thing to put at the front is it's always audience first. So what do the people potentially impacted in that situation or potentially affected want and need to know? You've got to look at it through their lens.
Yeah.
It definitely got to be an audience, people first approach.
Interesting. We've had quite a few people come through the door and say something similar to that. I mean, obviously, for balance, the business has had bad times, but it's had a great time as well. And it's cyclical. And at the minute, you're competing for talent and the market. And again, that's a different challenge, I guess.
Yeah, it's we're thankfully in a real position of opportunity. As you work with some of our partner organisations. successful orders for Typhoon at the back end of last year. The ongoing Global Combat Air Tempest program. Some real opportunities and long-term career opportunities for, if we just stick with Lancashire in this area, for young people in this area. The company's always had a strong commitment, even through the redundancy times, if we go back to then, of still recruiting apprentices and graduates. So that ethos of bringing through and providing opportunities for young people has always remained. And I think that is, partially driven by the fact that there are senior people who started their careers that way. So they want to continue that legacy of, I've had this opportunity, how do I create that legacy and opportunities for other young people in the area? It's a competition for talent, but to me that's a positive.
Yeah.
This county produces amazing young people. The challenge is, how do you reach those amazing young people who perhaps don't realise how amazing they are, or haven't got the opportunity to realise that opportunity? So part of my role that I've got now in terms of the community investment stuff is looking to work with organisations. The youth zones, as an example, Blackburn with Darwin, Chorley, and the Preston one that's currently being constructed, of their members, I'm generalising, might not get the opportunity to engage in STEM activities that other young people do. But for all we know, the greatest engineer that's ever lived could be in that, who just haven't. They don't realise the opportunities that they've got on their doorstep. So how can we engage with them to give them that aspirations that they can work in STEM, whether that's for BAE Systems or another organisation? Give them the inspiration to go and do it, but then help equip them with the skills that can enable them to go and do it.
Yeah.
It can't just be, the old bullseye, look what you could have won type thing. It's actually, you can do this, and we're going to help equip you with the skills to go and do it if that's what you want to do.
So this community investment angle, it's not just a case of BAE Systems dishing checks around to local organisations.
No, and a lot of our community investment activities is focused on that young people and STEM and employability skills. You could say we don't have a problem recruiting apprentices. If you look at numbers of applications for apprentice and graduate positions, it's 5-10-fold the number of positions we've got. This isn't about BAE Systems recruitment. This is about, in that instance, helping young people, maximise the potential that they've got. Yes, looking to inspire them into STEM areas, but it's also providing employability skills, irrespective of what field they go into. I think, when I have discussions with organisations who are perhaps looking to help, with BAE Systems' help for us to get involved, I describe it as, the cherry on the icing on the cake would be if a young person who's gone through the project or whatever it is, ends up working for BAE Systems. Brilliant. The icing is if they went into a STEM-related career with our suppliers or somebody in the STEM world. That fantastic. If it just helps them get the job and equip them with their skills that will, set them up for life, that's what it's about. Yeah. It's not about, recruiting into our organisation. It's about providing opportunities or helping young people realise the potential that they've got.
You talked earlier about leaders who have been through that apprentice element and wanted to see that live on, and you've kind of alluded to that from a young person's perspective. But you get that because you've got that lived experience, I guess. Yeah,
and there's lots of, and I'll shut up. I guess I should know the percentages, but I don't. But you've got. I can still turn up in meetings, and I've got the shortest career at 31 years. But you have lots of, members of the Air Board and senior managers who have gone through that apprenticeship or a graduate program, and they don't forget the opportunities and support that they got as young people. And a lot of it, you speak to outside organisations, and BAE Systems and other large blue chip organisations. So you've got Rolls-Royce in this region as well as another example. Some young people think, oh, well, I could never go and work there because I'm not going to go to Oxford or Cambridge or wherever. And this is not me holding myself up as a role model, because we've got lots of people in the organisation who are, went to state schools. I never went to university. We have people direct from school. It's sometimes just opening people's eyes of actually demything sometimes what you need to go and work for a large multinational organisation. And it's not just a BAE Systems thing. You could probably extrapolate that across lots of FTSE 100 blue chip organisations. But sometimes it's just opening people's eyes to go, actually, you can do it just because, I'm using myself where I grew up. I grew up in Millhill in Blackburn, and I went to Witton Park High School. Some people, well, if I can do it, so can everybody else. It's sometimes just all right, so that opportunity is there. What do I need to do? And it's also the challenge of, go back to before, in terms of 50% of colleagues in BAE Systems don't engineer or manufacture everything. So, young people might want to be an accountant or work in HR or communications, might not think of BAE Systems as a career opportunity. So sometimes it's opening their eyes to that. Actually, no, we want, if you're going to be the world's greatest accountant, we have those skills, and you can come and work on multi-billion-pound contracts. That floats lots of people's boats in terms of that. So the career opportunities, sometimes it's just opening people's eyes to that.
Interesting. We've talked about the community investment aspect of your current role, but there's the sustainability and ESG side too. How do you communicate the importance of the sustainability agenda to that whole mass of employees when, as an individual, they probably can't see how that will impact on them or the differences that they can make?
Yeah.
They're just a small cog.
Yeah, but it's, it's again, and that's not just a BAE Systems challenge. ESG is a challenge for the whole world. So I think the fact that it's a global challenge and a global, focusing on the climate change aspect, it's a global challenge that everybody faces. But the fact that ESG, and Tony, BAE Systems loves 3-letter acronyms. That ESG is a topic that's discussed, everywhere. So that makes it a little bit easier, because it's not a BAE Systems initiative, if you like, that says actually, we need to do something called ESG. It's a worldwide activity. That makes it a little bit easier, and also stimulates an interest. And I would say particularly in the younger demographic, where we have young people visiting or through the induction process, they are increasingly keen to understand what the company's ESG agenda and focus is. It's been increasingly becoming a key point in people selecting what organisation they go and work for. Yeah. It's not just all about terms and conditions. It's actually, what's the impact from an ESG perspective does this organisation have in my community? And that comes back to, we focus our activities from a community investment point of view on the areas where our employees live and work. So that's where we focus on. But from an environmental perspective, it sometimes can be difficult, because there isn't a lot, Paul as an individual can do. I can switch my monitor off at night before I go home. But those little things, stealing another company slogan, every little bit helps. Yeah. And sometimes it is that message. It's just being cognizant of the decisions you make from a business perspective. Consider if we focus on the E bit as to start, consider the environmental impact of that. Now, it's easy it's easier to do that when you're designing a new platform, building sustainability, environmental impact at the start. But when you're just going, actually, your daily life in terms of how you and we as an organisation operate, myself as an individual, there's not a lot I can do. But just be cognizant of it when you are making a decision. Do you need to drive the 100 miles to Brough, or is it something that you could utilise technology for? So the little examples like that, it's just how do you embed it? It almost, if you come to our sites at Wootton and Swansea, and Tony, I know you've been a number of times, you will clearly see that safety is the number one focus. To use a slogan, says, it's embedded within our DNA. Yeah. We need, the ultimate is to get ESG to the same, the full aspects of ESG. Obviously, safety is a key element of that strategy. But to get that whole ESG agenda embedded within everybody's DNA. So there is not, there isn't big, I'll call it, ESG campaigns. There are in some areas. But to me, it's that how do you embed it in leadership when they are engaging with their employees, that it's just embedded within there. If it's just a comms campaign, it's tomorrow's fish and chip paper, if that still exists. You know what I mean? So it's that actually, it's got to be lived and breathed.
Yeah.
It's got to be, actually, it is a focus for, as a managing director of this line of business, it is absolutely a key aspect. And I'm talking about it like I do with safety. It is that important because it is it's not only important for climate, it's increasingly driving business decisions in terms of how we operate. Net zero 2030, all that, but it's becoming, a differentiator in terms of employment in particular. I think that whole ESG agenda.
Clearly, it must have kind of business implications as well, because one of your major customer is the government, and that's their agenda as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's that. I say it's easier with new products because you can design it in from the start. But yeah, there's an absolute huge focus on how do you make existing platforms more and more sustainable. How do you utilise technology better? Because I talked previously, about the whole platform. That's the training platform. Can you use synthetics to deliver a increasingly growing percentage of a pilot's training before they actually go and have to fly the aircraft? Not only is that safer, it's also more environmentally friendly. Yeah,
synthetics for people who aren't.
So using simulation, gaming technology. For those of us, if you remember the old Cinema 2000 type stuff, that's just using, virtual reality, augmented reality, just putting them in a simulated environment. So, to deliver that training, as opposed to, strapping them in the backseat of a Hawk aircraft out of RAF Valley and going to do a sortie for 2 hours. And because you imagine, you can get it very, very realistic, and you can put other aircraft into the simulation that aren't up in the sky. So a training sortie that you need 8 aircraft for, you're using none. Yeah, that's a huge saving, both in cost but also carbon emissions, safety. There are huge benefits for it.
Yeah. Are there examples of any projects or campaigns that you've been involved in across the community or ESG where you thought, that definitely landed well, and that's worked. And
what's the saying? I don't think you can please all the people all the time. I think an interesting one is a couple of years ago we wanted a real renewed focus on safety, the visibility. We'd had a number of campaigns we used, and if you went around Wharton and Salisbury sites, you'd have seen materials and slogans that had probably been there, nigh on a decade that probably people didn't see anymore. They saw it but didn't take it in. So the remit was, right, it's got to be visible. But I was keen to try something different. The be careful type stuff. It's probably been done, for the past 30 years type stuff. So we developed a campaign that was, we wanted to, what do people come into work and talk about anyway? How can we embed safety into a cultural, normal conversation? So, we went down the sporting route and we came up with a campaign called Safety, It's No Game. So it's a real interesting balance of, obviously, you can't get a more serious subject than safety, but trying to attack it through a cultural and humorous lens without being patronising was a balance. So if you've been to SAR, or even if you've driven along the A59 across front of Salisbury, you'll see huge, great, big orange signage that one, for example, has a number of kits, sort of sporting kits, whether that be baseball, cricket, football, with number one, with safety as like the individual's name. And it's the tagline for that is, no matter which team you're in, safety is always number one. So not humorous, but just a different message of actually, whether you're shop floor based, office based, safety is number one. But what we did do was we did some punditry style videos. So we got the Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher style post-match analysis type videos with professional presenter analysing employees carrying about their work and potential mistakes from a safety or a well-being perspective.
Nice.
I loved it,
yeah.
And large portions of our populations did, but the pitch that we gave to our managing director and her board was, some people are going to hate this, but they'll be talking about it, and that's what it's about.
Yeah.
As a comms, as a comms person, I would love everybody to love the work that we did. I think if anybody ever does that, then it's time to hang up your pen, because it's you're not going to please all the people all the time. But we got some real great engagement, some real positive feedback. But we got some people didn't like it. It became Marmite.
Yeah.
But it was different, and people noticed it and saw it. But you can only do that for so long. It's what's different. Otherwise, it just becomes noise and wallpaper. So that was one that was risky to an extent.
Was there any way you could measure how it had gone down, or was has safety improved on?
Yeah, and to be fair, as an organisation, our safety performance is world leading. But it's always the you want to get down to zero, and it's always the last ones that are hardest ones. So yeah, we did see a performance improvement from a safety perspective. This was all around awareness and visibility. Measurements in terms of like engagements on the app and things like that we use to push out the videos. I think the time that went out, it was a piece of content that got the most views, the most likes, the most comments. So if you wanted to do some crude measurements, but people coming into meetings saying, I've had people in my team saying they hate that campaign, which, is a bit of a bruise to the ego, but they were talking about it. That was the thing.
Yeah. And I guess when we go back to where we came in, you've got so many messages going out all at once across that population.
And because safety affects everybody, it's got to be visible and it's got to be seen. And go back to the, not everybody likes sport, but as I pick a percentage, 80% of people, I haven't got any evidence to back that up, but if you just use that, large percentages of our population coming on a Monday morning after watching the football on a Sunday or the rugby or whatever it is, and we'll have conversations around sport. So we wanted to tap into that. Actually, if they started to talk about, did you watch the match yesterday? They made that connection with the safety content. So some of it was subliminal. It was almost just tapping into that, if I call it like a cultural norm. Instead of actually, here's a communications about safety, it's actually, here's, a piece of humorous content but delivering a serious message. That actually, when you have that conversation about the footy or the rugby or whatever sport you particularly enjoy, subliminally or subconsciously, it's triggering that safety thing.
Let's look to the kind of future then. You get your crystal ball out, Paul, now. What do you think the kind of future holds for PR in large organisations like BAE?
I think increasingly there's going to become more of a blurring between internal communications and external. I think it's already started and it's been progressing for a few years. I think we and other organisations will consider tools like LinkedIn, other social media channels as part of their employee comms suite. Particularly if I talk about the offline population, they might not go on a device until they go home. Yeah. So they might look on LinkedIn, X, whatever, to find out what's going on within their organisation. So I think increasingly, goes back to understanding your audience and what tools they utilise to help deliver your internal communications message. In the old days, you might deliver something very different internally as to externally because, never the twain shall meet. That doesn't happen and can't happen anymore. So I think that will continue.
I see that shift. I mean, we were first employed at BAE to help create the internal magazine, but that went external. That was left in all the reception areas on the flights and so on. And the content was applicable to anybody who was interested.
Yeah, and I think digital has accelerated that. Yeah. But it was always the case, the Evening Post and Evening Telegraph, would have been read by our employees, I know newspapers aren't, but, back in the day, they were effectively an internal comms channel as much as the internal magazine was because people read, saw, families read and had conversations. So they were always part of, but I think it's just more recognised now that actually the external tools are an internal comms channel as well. Yeah. Then that gives you a challenge of, you don't want employees finding out stuff through the media or social media before they find out internally. So that you've always got that balance of, employee first. But yeah, I think that more and more communicators will perhaps become generalists rather than employee comms or media relations or social media experts. And I think that's, the skill set of a communications person has evolved over the past decade into, increasing amount of use of video, podcasts, who'd heard a podcast 10 years ago, so it changes, I'm sure there'll be other stuff that comes down the line over the next decade that will change, the face of employee communications and PR more generally. But I don't think you'll ever get away from start with your audience.
Yeah, interesting. And finally, let's wrap things up by, if you were speaking to aspiring colleagues, just joined the organisation and they were going to having to navigate the complexities of that huge beast that it is. What advice would you give them, or what advice have you been given over the years that has held you in good stead?
Ask questions, challenge, grab opportunities that put your way. I would say, don't say no. Be curious, be challenging. Just because it's been done a certain way for the past 15, 20, 30, 50, 100 years doesn't mean it's right. Things evolve. People will take that challenge in the way that it's meant. People join our organisation on our side. You get a few years to ask the, I'll call it inverted commas, silly questions. There's no such thing as a silly question. I'd like to think that people who've joined my team or become my colleagues feel that I'm open to new ideas. Just because I've been with the company 30 years, doesn't mean we've been doing it the right way all the time. You've got to be open to new ideas and new thoughts and different ways of thinking it. And I think it got a good balance in terms of, I understand the organisation well, but, particularly with the younger people coming into the organisation, somebody who's 20 is a lot closer connected than somebody who's as old as I am. So you've got to it's going back to that, utilise the skills and knowledge and experiences of your team and your colleagues, and don't be afraid to express your opinions, on people who are more senior than you. I think as an organisation, I don't think I've met anybody at any level that didn't take challenge in the right way, because that's how we all learn. And work hard. It's a simple thing. That's how you progress. Deliver, and if you can't deliver, ask for help, because you'll get it.
Yeah. And
that's how you learn, isn't it? You if you can do it at the age of 18, I doubt our MD thinks he can do everything.
Yeah.
So it's a collective effort, but understand how you can contribute and where you can add value, and learn. Soak it up like a sponge.
Yeah. You're still learning then?
Oh, every day. Yeah. Still buildings I don't know where I've been, where they are. It's that big, but yeah. You work with hugely clever people, from an engineering, manufacturing point of view, but also people who join the organisation, whether that's from other organisations or as an apprentice. They can all teach you something. Or, I'm fortunate to work with, whether it be charitable organisations or community activities. They give you a completely different aspect and a completely different view of the world and the activity that they do. It's a huge learning from other sectors. So yeah, every day is a school day. We one of our previous MDs, it was his 40th year as apprenticeship, and it's a bit twee, but it's right. It's absolutely right. If you've not, there's probably not a day's go by or certainly a week goes by where you don't learn something new.
Well, that sounds like a perfect place to wrap things up. Here's to the next 31 years.
Hopefully not, but yeah. I get a sentiment. Yeah.
And thanks so much for that, Paul. I'm sure people will love that.
Pleasure. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks for listening to PR in the Real World. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast and leave us a quick review. Your support really helps spread the word and reach more marketing and PR professionals just like you. And don't forget to share this podcast with your colleagues or anyone who'd benefit from the insights we share. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for more tips, strategies and real-world stories from the PR frontlines.